it's a little terrifying because you absolutely cannot miss.
Goalies now are completely at a premium.
Not, right? Like, Canada doesn't have a ton of great options.
What's up, hockey fans? This is The Big Show. I'm Michael Traikos. With me today, we've got Ryan Kennedy, editor-in-chief of the Hockey News, and a Happy New Year to you, Drew. We haven't not seen you since it was 2025.
I know. Happy New Year's, boys. How are we doing?
Doing good.
Awesome.
Ryan and I were in Minnesota for the World Junior Championship, and that's where we're going to start things off. And I don't want to make excuses for Canada because they did not win again, but I'm going to make excuses and say if we had Macklin Celebrini and Matthew Schaefer and all the other NHLers, we would have won gold. But that being said, Canada finished with bronze. You know, do you have any opinions on that, Drew? Are you going to argue me?
Yeah, I mean, that's always your guys' excuse. I'm going to take the same thing. We had our best coach, David Carl, was at home not coaching this roster. I think if Dave Carl coaches this roster, it's an easy win for the Americans.
Agree to disagree.
I love the hot take. I love it.
That being said, kudos to Sweden for, breaking a drought and finally winning gold. A dominant performance by the Swedes. Went undefeated throughout the tournament, beat Czechia, which also kudos to them. Another, I think, third straight year where they medaled. They finished with silver. It was a hell of a gold medal game. Actually thought Czechia was going to pull out the comeback with final 3 minutes. I was like, are they going to score a goal per minute here? But Sweden ended up taking them 4-2 in the gold medal game. Ryan, let's start things off. A ton of great performances all around from draft eligibles, from NHL prospects. Whose draft stock rose the most throughout the tournament?
All right. Well, I'll leave some for Drew. I think I know who he's going to talk about. So I'm going to talk about a couple of players, starting with Viggo Bjork from Sweden. He had a fantastic tournament. His line with Stenberg and Eddie Genborg was incredible. Bjork had that amazing semifinal game where he had 4 breakaways in overtime against Finland. Unfortunately, couldn't bury them. But, I mean, the fact that he had that many was incredible. He also played like every other shift other than when he took a penalty. So clearly the Swedish coaches trusted him, even though he is a young player, and he was fantastic throughout. I'm also going to mention Thomas Trarenko from Slovakia. And, Slovakia went out in the quarters, but Trarenko was one of the top goal scorers in the tournament. And coming into the World Juniors, I was thinking he was probably a first rounder, maybe a late first rounder, but I think he probably bumped his stock up a bit. He's listed at 5'10", so I don't think he's going to go super, super high, but it is kind of a smaller draft in general. Like Bjork is sub 6 foot as well. So I kind of see, Bjork, I think maybe he'll be just outside of the top 10. But last year, Victor Eklund, who was kind of a similar size, he went like 15th or 16th to the Islanders, which to me was way too low because I love Victor Eklund. But I think Bjork might be in this similar scenario, and Trarenko maybe a little bit after that. But very impressive. But I know there was another Swede that Drew's going to talk about who was exceptional as well.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the easy one here. Obviously, I mean, his resume alone, I think he's got 24 points in 25 games in the Swedish league, which is not an easy task. It's a hard league to score in. My brother Nick plays there now. He had a phenomenal tournament, and I think just the fact that they were able to obviously win as well is going to help his draft stock. And I think the race for first overall is now officially on, probably more than it was before the tournament started.
Yeah, I don't know if he mentioned his name, but Ivor Stenberg, who again played on the line with Viggo Bjork, Ryan's pick, had a lot of trust from the Swedish coach in that young line, where 2 of the 3 players, Eklund was the other guy, I believe, on that line, all draft eligible. So yeah, a lot to look forward to as we head into the draft. I'll say, Gavin McKenna, a lot of criticism at this tournament. I think when you're the presumptive number 1 overall pick going into the season, it's, the scouts are just looking to pick apart your game, and it happens every year. He also had a fantastic tournament. I guess, it wasn't as good as everyone wanted. We were looking for that Connor Bedard moment from McKenna, but still finished tied for second in overall points. Showed a lot of great playmaking skills, the kind of skills that Ryan thinks is going to make him a slightly bigger version of Patrick Kane. So, this thing's not done. I think if he goes back to Penn State and wins a national championship, we could see, I guess McKenna become the number 1 overall pick. But either way, he's going to be, him along with Stenberg. It should be a fantastic kind of race down the wire to see who's going to go number 1, or maybe it's going to be a guy like Kiefer Verhoff who kind of slides in there as well. I remember one scout telling me during the tournament that it's kind of draft where, depending on who gets number 1 overall pick, we could see, 1, 2, or 3 or 4 different kind of options play out. Back to Canada, Zayne Parekh, who also had a fantastic tournament, set the Canadian record for most points as a defenseman in a single tournament. He was outstanding, obviously as a Calgary Flames draft pick. He had to apologize for comments that he made earlier in the tournament where he described NHLers as robots and, basically saying that they're still afraid to show their personality. Backtracked on those comments, saying, I think some things got spun out of proportion. I probably worded things wrongly, but obviously it wasn't my intent to, in the words I said, and I sincerely apologize to the Flames organization and my teammates. Drew, you've been down this road before where you're in a team situation and, you're trying to be not the guy that just stands out. But I thought we kind of got away from this idea that NHLers aren't afraid to show their personality. Was it right for Parekh to apologize after saying something that might still be true?
I think because of the fact he named the Calgary Flames and his teammates in there, it was probably the right move as a young guy to apologize, because obviously he's going to be in the locker room with those guys. Now, I think the comment that he was making was very accurate. I think if he maybe just said NHLers in general, I think I agree with his comment and there's no need to apologize. But it is funny now that someone does kind of speaks out against the norm in hockey culture, and the next thing you know, he's getting grilled all over the internet and has to apologize. So I think he probably could have worded things better, but I agree with his point, and he had a great tournament. And obviously they would have liked to have won gold, but I think he did probably as much as he could have.
Mm-hmm. You're right. Is this a matter of it's a young guy who's coming in and saying this stuff, not like a guy who's been in the league for 5 years?
Yeah, and with everything related to the World Juniors, and I'll lump this in because of when it happened, it's like, let's remember these are teenagers. They're still growing. They're still learning. In the case of Zayne Parekh, starting the season with the Flames, he's hanging around these pros, full-grown men, and he still has a lot to learn. And he's learning that now. He's kind of learning it the hard way because it was so public, but. I kind of cut him some slack in that regard because he's still getting used to speaking with the media, knowing how to couch things, as Drew pointed out. We are starting to see more personality come out. I think, like the Tkachuk brothers, they certainly help. And the fact that they're second generation NHLers, I think it helps with, their, Brad Marchand, who's obviously a great veteran, he can kind of say anything. Because he's won everything, and that's sort of his personality. I think we're going to talk about him a bit later. But I would also point out, Matthew Schaefer's a good example of a teen player who has kind of endeared himself to everybody, where he's got this great kind of bubbly personality, and we're already seeing it. And he's already given some great interviews in his time around the NHL sphere. But I do think with Parekh, it was the right thing to apologize because, as Drew pointed out, it was kind of like about his teammates in a way. And I was just kind of wondering, it's like, okay, well, assuming he goes back to Calgary after the World Juniors and doesn't get loaned out to, a junior team, it's like, what's the sort of fun kangaroo court punishment for those comments? Is it unloading the bags from the bus every day? What do you got, Drew?
No, I think when he walks into the locker room and he suits up before his first game, I'm sure one of the older guys is going to make a comment about it and require him to put probably a pretty significant amount of money on the board for the team to win the game. That'll happen. And then I think after that, it'll be water under the bridge. So I don't think it'll be a huge deal for him at all. Within the locker room, I'm sure there will be some comments made about it, and definitely some friendly banter. But I think guys in Calgary are going to move on pretty quickly, and I'm sure most guys in Calgary probably agree with his comments.
Yeah. Will anybody put a toy robot in his stall?
That would be very good to have that dialed in before he gets back.
It would be awesome, Ryan, if he came in there and just did like the robot dance. He's like,
oh, that would be good. Yeah.
But you make a good point, though. Like he plays on a team with Nazem Kadri. Nazem Kadri also was kind of, a guy who got criticized for showing personality early in his career with Toronto. So it's just like, come on, guys, get over this. And I like your point about Matthew Schaefer. He's a guy that you see him in his post-game interviews. He's having a lot of fun. Another guy who Ryan mentioned is having a lot of fun. Maybe a little troll job the other day was Brad Marchand, who let it be known that in the summer it was between Toronto and Florida, and there was a really good chance that he was going to sign with Toronto. And Drew, let's start things off. Was there a chance that the Leafs were going to land Brad Marchand, or was this yet another troll job by the guy who's just so good at this?
I think it was a little bit of both. I thought his funniest comment from the whole interview was basically like saying it's really too bad that all you guys in here ran Mitch Marner, who I'm sure he's close with from Hockey Canada, out of town. So yep. I think that I could actually see from a hockey standpoint him signing there, but I definitely think he loves to do everything he can to rile up the media.
Yeah, right. Was it down to Toronto and Florida? Or were there other teams you think in the mix if he didn't sign with the Panthers?
It's a good question because you have to think about Brad Marchand at this point in his career. As I said earlier, like he's won everything. So like all those boxes are ticked. You stay in Florida. It's like, you love the culture already. You just went through a Stanley Cup run with the Panthers. You know that it's a great team culture. It's a great place for a player to play. It's sunny all the time. You can take a golf cart to the practice facility. It's a very nice practice facility. I've been to it numerous times at this point. Or do you do something that would make you an absolute massive legend, even more so than you already are? And that would be win a Stanley Cup in Toronto. So I do think that it was a possibility, especially if you think like, okay, well, Marner's gone. What if I play wing with Auston Matthews, right? Like, what would that combination be like? And I'm just trying to think of like, if I can get into Brad Marchand's mind, how funny would it be for him to play for Toronto and beat his old mates in Florida in a playoff series, or beat his old mates in Boston in a playoff series? So I see it as a possibility, but also because Brad Marchand is such an evil genius, this is just once again him with that great sort of like wrestling character that he has when he talks to the media. This is just the latest salvo that we all love so much.
It's interesting. I think if he doesn't sign with Florida, there's a good chance that he would have signed with Pittsburgh ahead of Toronto, just because that's another one that he could have checked off with, play with Sid. Or how about this? Like, would we see him go to Colorado? Yeah. Because at least there you avoid that whole Boston-Toronto, like you mentioned, that rivalry is real.
Yeah. Why would he avoid it, though? He's Brad Marchand.
He always wants to go back to Boston one day, Ryan.
Maybe.
He doesn't want to be allowed in the city.
Yeah, fair.
Speaking of the Leafs, Auston Matthews is on a heater. I don't know. I think it's too early to say if he's going to win the Rocket Richard, but he now has 6 goals in his last 3 games, and I think he's got like 7 in his last 4. He's looking like the Auston Matthews that we saw a couple of years ago, where he's just dominating. Ryan, let's start with you real quick. Let's start with Drew, since you're having a sip of water there, Ryan. You go back to your water. Drew, how many goals is he going to end up with? Is Matthews is 40? Is that potential?
Yeah, so I think he's on pace right now for like 44 goals based on the amount of games he's played. But I'm actually going to go over. I think he's going to hit 50 throughout his career. He scored in bunches. Obviously, for his standards, he had a historically bad start. And the way he's been scoring lately, you've seen it over the years when he gets the confidence and starts seeing the puck goes in. So I think he's going to continue this pace, and I think somehow, with the start that he had, he's going to find a way to get to 50.
it really feels like he kind of flicked a switch like a week or two ago, where it's like, I don't know if he's healthier than he was early in the season or if he's just fed up. But it really does feel like he was like, all right, I'm just gonna take over. I'm gonna score at will. That's what we need if we're gonna make a playoff push. Incredibly bizarre that they are still in the hunt despite all the injuries. Despite all the adversity they've gone through. That win over Florida last night really put them in a much better position. And I think it's going to be fascinating to see what the rest of the season looks like for Toronto's big guns, because I think, like with William Nylander, I was at a game, I guess a couple of weeks ago, where he was scoring, but he didn't look jazzed about it. It was sort of like, yeah, whatever. Like, we need these goals. I'm going to get them. And I wonder if things were kind of weighing on him at that point. But you get some wins together, and all of a sudden things are happier and the dressing room's better. And, the Leafs, obviously they have a lot of work to do, but, the way Matthews is going recently, it's like, okay, well, maybe there's something here again. Maybe he's back to the old Auston Matthews. And I think he can go between 45 and 50 goals this year. I think he'll increase his pace slightly.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I guess it was like a month ago, maybe Connor McDavid did a similar thing where it was like he flipped the switch, and then all of a sudden he really shrunk the gap between him and Nate in terms of the scoring race. And I guess that's what great players can do. Like, you think they're just like, oh, like we were talking about Mary Ryan. Like, you were not being facetious. You were saying, like, is there a chance that he's starting to look his age, Auston Matthews, and kind of slow down? Like, and then it was like, I think he heard your comments, first of all.
Maybe.
Because they just turned things on. And one team that's probably happiest about this, forget about the Leafs, it's Team USA, where they're going, all right, this is the Auston Matthews we need to go up against the McDavids and the McKinnons and the Crosbys. So a good sign for you, Drew, and Team USA, if Auston Matthews can carry this into Milano a month from now. All right, let's talk about the Edmonton Oilers. We were just talking about Connor McDavid. Let's talk about his goaltender. Tristan Jarry is going to be out a few more weeks. He's been placed on the long-term injured reserve, placed on Tuesday. As Coach Chris Knobloch said, he's expected to be out at least a couple more weeks. As you recall, Jarry suffered a lower body injury on December 18th. Since then, Pittsburgh has gone 3-4 in his absence. So, Ryan, Oilers, less scary to play now that Jarry's out long term.
Not particularly. I think the Oilers are pretty scary because, as we were just talking about, they have Connor McDavid and they have Leon Draisaitl. And, goaltending has been an issue for them. It's been up and down for several years now. And yet they've been to 2 Stanley Cup finals. And you look at the standings right now, and they're in a great position in the Pacific, particularly because Vegas is struggling so mightily. So all of a sudden, it feels like this is just who the Oilers are in this era. They struggle in the fall, and then as we get into winter, they catch fire. And they continue to, do that for most of the rest of the season. So if Edmonton puts himself in a good position in the next month or so, you get the Olympic break for Jarry as well. I think they're fine. I think that they can survive, and they are the kind of team where it's like, if they need to score 5 goals to win a game, they can certainly do that.
Wait, Drew, like the Oilers, man. Ryan's point, like their goaltending has always just been terrible this year. Like whether it was Skinner, whether it's Jarry, now that you don't have Jarry, like does it even matter?
No, I don't think it matters much. And kind of what you guys both said. I mean, the funniest thing is, like, I was looking at the scoring race, and I felt like Nate had a huge lead, and then literally like 4 days later, it felt like I looked, and the script had completely flipped. So, yeah. I mean, no one goes in to play the Edmonton Oilers and is worried about, like, how are we going to score tonight? It's more about how are we going to not let these guys score 3 or 4 goals. So it's been fun to watch. I mean, I think he had, you guys would probably know, but did he have like 38 points in the month of December, which is just, I mean, that's a good season for like some good third line players. So, I mean, it's obviously been great to watch. I think that they're going to be fine when there's absence, because I don't think it's a huge I guess, talent gap, no matter who they have in the net. So I think they'll be fine. And like, if those guys are playing, well, I mean, they're big two, call it, is playing at the level that they're at, I think that they're still going to find a lot of ways to win hockey games.
Ryan was talking about that Pacific Division, which is arguably the worst division in hockey. I think the Leafs would be the second best team if they were in the Pacific, which just kind of shows you where the Pacific is right now. But it was an interesting game. The Anaheim Ducks, who have been struggling, they played the Philadelphia Flyers, which meant it was a chance for us to kind of look back on the Zegras for Cutter Gauthier trade. Zegras scored twice after one goal. He did a celebration where he basically feigned picking up the phone and then slammed it down, which was, I guess, a reflection of how quickly his phone call went when he found out he was being traded from Anaheim to Philadelphia, which is just great. We're talking about players showing personality. That's personality. Drew, what do you think's changed the most about Zegras' game this season?
Well, how about his interview after the game, too? Talking about personality.
Yeah.
I mean, that was great.
I can't repeat it because there was a lot of F-bombs there.
There was. And I was surprised with how many there were. But, I mean, talking about a guy who was fired up, showing his personality. But, I mean, I just think it was a time where he came into the league. He had some success playing center. They obviously made a coaching change in Anaheim, who probably I could see not getting along with Zegras' personality very well. They put him on the wing where he has said historically in his career he has not felt as comfortable. Then he obviously goes to Philadelphia, new coaching staff, plays the majority of the time at center. I know he's playing on the wing last night, but gets off to a great start. He's obviously a guy that needs to play with confidence, and he has found that. And I was happy for him. You know what I mean? Like, you see guys who kind of go through it a little bit, end up getting traded, and now he's having a great year. So I was happy for it. Love the celebration and love the interview.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, Drew. And the league is more fun when Trevor Zegras is having fun. You know, like when he first came into the league, and it wasn't even that long ago, I mean, you know, such an outgoing kid and obviously has so much skill and uses it in fun ways that I think it's nice that he's been reborn in Philly. And it is too bad. Like, you know, what would he have done in Anaheim under Joel Quenneville? Maybe it would have been a completely different scenario, but hindsight is 2020. What we do know is that him and Rick Tocchet seem to be on the same page in Philly, and that's great for the Flyers. And, you know, Cutter Gauthier has been massive for the Ducks. So sometimes you get those trades that work out for both teams, and it's nice to see.
Yeah. So would you say it's a wash? Like, you know, neither team won nor lost?
Kind of feels like it. I'm not sure how many points Zegras has this year, but I mean, Anaheim's doing better than expected in general. And, you know, the Flyers are hanging around in the Metro. So yeah, seems like a wash.
Awesome. All right. Before we get to rapid fire, ugly game for the New Jersey Devils on Tuesday, a 9-0 loss. Jacob Markstrom, who was in net, said it was embarrassing. After the game, fans were calling for everything. They were calling for Sheldon Keefe to be fired. They're calling for Tom Fitzgerald to get removed. And I guess there's they're pointing the fingers at a lot of players who they think should be traded. You know, whether it's Dougie Hamilton or Andre Palat. You know, this is coming not too long after Luke Hughes was booed mercifully. Let's get that one out. After basically scoring 2 own goals in a game. So ugly times for the Devils. And Drew, you know, let's put on your sort of team owner hat here, or super fan hat. Like, what would you do with the Devils right now? Is it a trade? You know, would you look at doing what Buffalo did and replacing the GM, or, you know, Sheldon Keefe, who's just hired there over just a year ago? You know, does he kind of get a lot of the blame here?
Well, I think you need to start with, I've always liked their roster. Like, on paper, I think they should be a playoff team. I thought they would be a playoff team. Now, what I think to me is a little bit concerning is leaving Jacob Markstrom in there for all 9 goals. He's supposed to be a guy who, like, I think it's always the coach's responsibility to, I mean, obviously the whole team was playing horrible, right? But you should always have your goalies back a little bit. I think that Markstrom is one of the most well-liked, respected guys in the NHL. So when times are going bad, I think one of the worst things you can do as a coach is lose the room. And I'm sure that there were a lot of guys in that locker room who loved Jacob Markstrom who were probably thinking, what are you doing here? You know what I mean? Like, what is the point of leaving him in the game? Like, I just don't understand what that accomplished at all. I think if anything, like you said, you start seeing guys being like, what are we doing here? I mean, you could have pulled him at 4 different times throughout the game just to kind of save him and save his confidence, right? And he's a guy who's probably going to be one of the most important guys in their team. So, I mean, I think like the way it works, obviously, in all sports is you're not going to be able to blow up the whole roster in one day. The easiest thing to do is normally the coach, but like you said, he's a guy who they just signed there. So they're in a tough spot. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I never thought they had a roster that was really had a chance to win a Stanley Cup, but I definitely thought they would be a playoff team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good points. Ryan, how about you? Like, what do you think needs to be done there?
Well, yeah, I agree with Drew. Like, I think it's too early for a coaching change because you don't want to get into that cycle of having a new voice every other year. You want some stability. And yeah, I mean, the roster, they've done some really good things there. I wonder if it's a matter of like the players need to have like a players only meeting. And then maybe they have one scheduled, but
I'm sure there's one scheduled now.
Yeah, exactly. There's going to be one now, or there's definitely should be. Mike Rupp made a very good point on social media, which was, okay, they lose 9-0, which is terrible, but also they had no penalties the entire game, which means that in the midst of being absolutely thrashed by a rival team, no one was like, hey, maybe we should like have some sort of pushback, even if it's like a fight, even if it's just like whacking a guy with your stick to show that you care, even if it's taking a roughing penalty to show you care. No one on the Devils did. So it does feel like these players need to say themselves, like, who are we? And do we care enough about the logo on the front that we actually, even if you have to step out of your comfort zone, like they don't necessarily have a lot of maulers on that team, and that's fine. But you figure somebody would say, like, enough is enough, boys.
Yeah, I might be wrong in this, but Quinn Hughes, there was a lot of smoke about him going to New Jersey, and I almost get the feeling like the room in New Jersey, like the Devils thought he was coming there. Like when he was getting traded, it was like, all right, obviously he's coming here.
Save us.
Yeah, and he goes to Minnesota, and it was like, oh, so we had a real good chance at getting him. We didn't pony up the assets to get Quinn Hughes. Now he's in Minnesota. After that, now Luke Hughes gets booed, and then now you're going, okay, if I'm Jack Hughes and Luke Hughes, like, forget about trying to drag my brother over to Jersey. Like, is there a chance now that those guys jump ship and go, I want to play for Billy Guerin, who they obviously love. They keep mentioning Bill Guerin like every chance they get.
Well, they're gonna love
here. Like, are we starting to think like that could be the move that's coming, like down the road?
Well, they're going to love Bill Guerin because he's shown that basically you can go in there and ask for $17.5 million. So I'm sure Quinn Hughes is going to be pretty happy. And then his brothers are going to be like, okay, we can all go there and make $17.5 million and life will be good.
Oh, it's a weird chain of events. Sometimes it's like the worst trades you make are the ones you don't make. Like, it's like, you put Quinn Hughes in that team, they're not losing 9-0. They're not booing Luke Hughes. The fans are just ecstatic that they got all 3 Hughes brothers. But
I thought Ryan and obviously Mike Rupp's point there is pretty interesting too, because that's why I've never thought they've really been a Stanley Cup contender, just because they don't have enough jam, like I guess heavy skill throughout their lineup, and they're like, obviously that shows. But I mean, you look around the league, like the teams who are good, that's not happening. If the Colorado Avalanche, that's not happening. The Dallas Stars, that's not happening. Tampa, Florida, that's certainly not happening. And that's pretty significant. I thought it was a great point by both you guys.
Well, thank you.
All right. Listen, guys, for over 75 years, the Hockey News has been the ultimate hockey fix. Now get all 12 issues delivered straight to your door, packed with story, stats, and a bonus gift issue to kick things off. head over to thn.com and get in on the action. And with that, we go to the final action of Rapid Fire, Ryan's favorite segment of the show. We're going to start with the World Juniors. Ryan, yay or nay? Latvia, where my boy Robert Smits was playing, just got named to
Albert Smits.
What is that? What I say? Albert Smits.
Yeah, Robert Smits is from the Latvian Cure.
That's a good one.
Thank you.
All right, yay or nay? Latvia will win a medal in the World Juniors within the next 5 years.
Nay. As much as I love Latvia, they're such a scrappy nation, but as I always like to joke, anything can happen in the quarterfinal at the World Juniors, but nothing can happen in the semifinal. You have that sort of big five right now with Canada, US, Sweden, Finland, and the Czechs. So when you get to the semifinal, obviously only 4 of those teams can make it. Somebody's always going to be on the outside. But if you are a Latvia or a Switzerland, even if you upset somebody in the first round, you're then taking on a Titan after that. So I just think it's a little too much. I do think that Latvia is kind of the new Switzerland, where they don't really have to worry about relegation anymore. They're a little bit higher up on the food chain, but I don't think they're going to medal.
Drew, do you have any experience playing against those mighty tough Latvians, and do you think they're going to medal?
I think no chance they medal. I do agree with Ron. Like, it does seem like they've taken a step forward as a country with their development of young kids. I do agree kind of how, I mean, when I came into the league, I think there was 3 guys from Switzerland. Now there's probably 15 or 20. I think we are going to see more Latvian players in the NHL. But I just think they're drawing dead at this tournament, especially with the way the other countries are. And then, I mean, obviously, not to get political on here, but I think the tournament as itself suffers a lot from a hockey perspective with no Russia. I assume that'll eventually change here at some point. And I mean, they're a top 2 or 3 team every year. So I just think it's going to be too hard for Latvia.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. Albert Smits, as I mentioned, not Robert Smith, as Ryan reminded me, heading to the Olympic team. That's how thin Latvia's, best on best roster is, that they have to take a kid who's draft eligible to the Olympics. And, all the power to Smits, who, was very much a grown man amongst boys at this tournament when you looked at how he was built. But, there's no way he should be playing for the Olympic team, if you had that depth.
Yeah.
You going to say something, Drew? Or?
I was just going to say, what a cool experience. I mean, it's crazy that he's doing that, but I mean, what an amazing experience for the kid. Like, he's basically rolling the World Juniors right into the Olympics. And I mean, the one thing that is fun about these tournaments, though, is like in one game, you never know what can happen, right? So, especially with all the pressure that some of these bigger teams face, but it'll be fun to watch him at that tournament.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he goes from playing against World Juniors to facing off against Auston Matthews and the Americans in Game 1. So good luck, kid.
Oh, wow.
All right, with almost every team now at the halfway mark, Ryan, which off-season acquisition do you think has worked out the best, and who's been the most disappointing?
Okay, so the best off-season acquisition for me, Brandon Bussey in Carolina, picked up off of waivers on October 5th, and he has been lights out for the Hurricanes. And even more important now that Peter Kochetkov is out long-term, possibly for the entire season and playoffs. So if the Carolina Hurricanes are going to finally break through with this group, I know they have Freddie Anderson, but Brandon Bussey might be the guy. As for most disappointing, and maybe this isn't disappointing because my expectations were pretty low, but Evander Kane has not worked out in Vancouver. I think most of us kind of assumed it would not work out, but there was that little sliver where it's like, well, he's in his hometown. Maybe he'll really show up and break through again, but that has not been the case. And obviously the Canucks have suffered for it.
Yeah. How about you, Drew? Off-season disappointment and, player, or I guess you could even say coach, who's made a huge impact.
You know what? I'm going to go with Nikolai Ehlers in Carolina. I know he started scoring more lately, but he was obviously a guy in Winnipeg that was very comfortable playing in their system, played with Mark Scheifele his whole time. And I mean, it just seems like this is kind of story every time one of these superstars comes into Carolina from a different organization, that due to the system that Carolina plays, he really seems like, I mean, I'm happy for him because you don't want to see a guy sign that deal, and he's been playing better and scoring lately. But I mean, he got off to a horrific start, and I think he's going to probably continue to struggle there a little bit compared to what he was used to doing in Winnipeg. In terms of coach, I mean, I think you got to go what we just talked about. I mean, I think you have to go with Sheldon Keefe in terms of most disappointing. Now, in terms of guys I thought that have really impressed me, it's hard to say because, like, you look at Marner in Vegas, who got off to a great start, and he's slowed down recently with how much Vegas has struggled. I think that seems like every guy that's been brought into the Colorado Avalanche lineup, some of their young guys, not necessarily guys that they traded for, but Brock Nelson has been huge for them. I mean, I know he came over at the deadline, so he wasn't necessarily a guy who was fresh there this summer, but he's a guy who I didn't think had a chance to make the Olympic roster probably at the start of the year, and has really played well enough now, and congrats to him.
Yeah. You know, Dan Year for me, you know, in Pittsburgh, they're still hanging around in a wild card spot. That's been a huge acquisition. And, you know, I guess if we wanted to even stretch it out to the general managers, Jarmo Kekalainen, who was brought in as a senior advisor, is now as the GM. He's made a huge impact in Buffalo, but, you know, still half a season to go. We'll see how this all turns out. All right, Drew, Stanley Cup prediction before the season. Remind me, who did you have, and has it changed now that we're at the halfway point?
You guys aren't going to like this. This is not going to go well with both of you. I had the Colorado Avalanche. They're still going to win the Stanley Cup. It's hilarious. People in Denver are mad that they've lost. I think they've lost 2 games in a row now, which seems like would be 30 games for the Buffalo Sabres. But I think, you know what I actually think? I was talking to someone the other day. I think that sometimes you get a little worried when things go so well for teams in the regular season. Like if they were just to come, I mean, obviously they weren't going to keep up the pace that they were at. But if they were to basically go through the regular season with 0 adversity, for some reason that would make me a little nervous going into the playoffs. Sure. So I'm almost happy. I think for them, the best thing might be to lose 3 or 4 in a row here, just to kind of get a reset and kind of get back to neutral. So they were my preseason pick. They're still my pick. And I just think in a 7-game series, they're just going to be too much to beat.
That's interesting. Yeah, like, you know, not too long ago, Tampa Bay basically ran away with the entire league in the regular season and then got knocked out, swept by the Columbus Blue Jackets. So there is some truth to that. You do need to kind of go through some battles that you can turn back on in the playoffs. How about you, Ryan? Who did you have again?
I actually had to look it up. I looked up what I said in the yearbook, and I had Los Angeles over Florida. So I would like to change that because the Kings are struggling. They traded Deneau. You know, there's calls from the media for them to fire Jim Hiller, which I think they probably should have gone with somebody a little more experienced to begin with. So we'll see if anything happens on that front. The Kings are really struggling right now. Florida, you know, if they get into the playoffs, they'll be dangerous, but obviously Barkov, you know, got hurt after I made my prediction and he's gone for the year. So I think I'm going to go back to, you know, manifesting the all barbecue Stanley Cup final of Carolina versus Dallas. I mean, Colorado, how do you not pick the Avs at this point?
Yeah, no, it's true.
If I couldn't pick the Avs, I think Dallas is going to win the West. Or, like come out from that side.
Who do you like out of the East?
Oof. I mean, it's tough to go against the Panthers. And especially, too, you guys know, I know Barkov's supposed to be out for the year, but somehow he'll be back like in the second round of the playoffs. And then
did you see him dancing with the Stanley Cup crew? Like, doesn't look like a guy that's going to be up for the season.
I know. And I was laughing. I was thinking of the Kings. I don't know if you guys heard that Drew Doughty story he told online recently about being late for the gold medal game.
No.
Oh, this was amazing. He told it on basically, like, I guess at the he told a great story. I won't go too long on it, but basically he was late to the gold medal game of the Olympics. Was like starting to get worried that he was going to get scratched by Hockey Canada. some of his teammates ended up covering for him. He got there a couple minutes before warmups, and then obviously played a fantastic game, and they won a gold medal. But I had never heard this story before. He gave a great interview on it that went pretty viral. So the Kings are in trouble too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know what? He could have been late for the first period, and I still would have had Drew Doughty out there every other shift because he looked fantastic in 2010. All right. This was a fantastic show. Thanks to Drew Shore, Ryan Kennedy. I'm Michael Traikos. This was The Big Show. We'll see you next time. Thanks again.
That was fun. Thanks, guys.